Hey everybody, thanks for tuning back into another episode of Cruiser Chat. Same thing as usual. No real plan for this evening, just whatever questions people have, I will try to answer. I've dropped a link at the beginning of the chat where you can call in live, kind of like a Zoom link, or you can just type messages into chat, whichever works. Yeah, but other than that, no real plan. It was cool. We hit 4 million views on YouTube earlier this week, which I know isn't a lot for like the really big channels, but I thought that was a crazy number for people watching Land Cruiser repair videos. So I thought that was pretty cool. So thank you to everybody that's, liked, subscribed, and watched all the videos. Yeah, I've got, I think, 5 videos now that I've filmed and that I'm working on editing. Hoping to get those edited this weekend, and then they'll get uploaded onto the members only side of the YouTube channel, and then they'll get released, one a week, for the next month, whatever. The goal is to always have some videos in the members only section for a while before they go public. But I'd gotten behind on shooting videos, so I've spent the last couple weeks shooting a bunch to try to get myself more of a cushion for having stuff already filmed and edited. But yeah, that's all the real news from the shop this week. I'm not sure how long I'm going to stay on here this evening. I whacked myself in the head with a drive shaft this morning, and I'm still not feeling great, but I figured it was too late in the day to actually cancel chat, so I figured I'd come on here and see how long my head will tolerate this, because I've got a wicked headache. And I feel like there was something that we were doing at the shop this week that I was going to mention, and now that I'm on here, for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. And Guitar, thanks for letting me know audio and video is crystal clear. Yeah, it was, I came home from work early after knocking myself out with the drive shaft, and I was like, I'll have plenty of time to set everything up for chat. And then, like 4:30, I'm sitting here, and one of my dogs is on the guest bed behind me, and just lets out the most horrendous yelp. And he'd gotten his dew claw stuck in his, rabies tag and ripped his dew claw out. So I ended up having to make an impromptu trip to the vet to get that checked out. And then got home, and it was a scramble to get everything set up. Like, the audio stays set up here, but the camera that I'm using is the same one that gets taken to the shop for videos. And that is the thing I was going to talk about. I've been playing with multicam videos this week, shooting multiple angles and zoomed in, and all that jazz. And it's been kind of fun. It's been a learning curve figuring out how to edit them. But really cool, like I was doing a radiator replacement on a Corolla, and I had a camera coming from either side of the engine bay. So as I moved back and forth in the edit, I can switch views depending on which part of the engine bay I'm blocking, actually working on it, which was a lot of fun and a lot nicer than continuously moving the camera. Just having 2 cameras running was pretty cool. So hoping to do more of that in the future if the video turns out well once I get done editing it. I started on it last night. And it seems pretty good so far. So we'll see how it ends up. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, just let me know. You can either type them in the chat box or use the link at the top of chat to join live with audio and video. The live audio video ones are kind of cool because it's people not just staring at me. There's somebody else for them to look at. I've been using the same software to do the Land Cruiser consultation calls. I guess I've done 3 of them so far, and it's worked pretty well for that, because it's cool because I can, the person's phone, iPad, whatever, I can hear and see what they're working on, while we're talking about their cruiser repairs. There's some limitations to it, like I'm figuring out the amount of scan tool data that I'm used to having, at my fingertips when I'm trying to diagnose something. not everybody has that. So it's kind of hard getting all the information to test things. But otherwise, the consultations seem to be going pretty good. And Knuckle wants to know if it's true the shop no longer works on FJ40s. That was true for a period of time. We stopped working on everything older than 95 when Crash left. But Crash came back, I guess, about a year ago. So we've started filtering the older stuff back in. When it was only me in the shop while he was gone, it was just the 40s, the 60s, the 62s. Because of the age, they tend to take longer, and it would tie up bays, and it was hard to clear them through the backlog, so we just stopped working on them. Now that Crash is back and there's 2 of us in the shop, we're back to working on them. We're not doing everything on them, but we are working on the older stuff in a limited capacity. And follow-up question for the 80 series front heater. When I turn it on, I can feel outside air coming in through the far right vent. I understand it's the closest to that fresh air intake under the cowl. I'm not exactly sure what the question is. I'm guessing it's not hot that's coming through the passenger vent. And I can't say that I've ever experienced that. The only 80 that I've really ridden in cold weather where I would have been paying attention to the heat is mine. When Crash was driving it at Fall Crawl recently. And the heat doesn't really work in my 80, so I don't have anything good to compare it to. I would assume that they would be, fairly equal in temperature across the dash, but I've never actually paid attention to it. I'm trying to think. God, it's been forever since I've had the dash out of an 80 to see how the ductwork works. But it's not like, I don't think it's like the modern stuff with blend doors for controlling temp. I think it's only switching heat on and off by the valve on the firewall. In which case, if you've got heat, then heat's coming out of the heater core. I'd almost wonder if maybe you've got one of the ducts disconnected. Because I'm not sure how else that heat would be biased to not come out that one vent. But it's probably been 20 years since I've had the dash out of an 80. So I don't remember exactly how the ductwork goes in there. I think it just comes off the center of the box and goes across. Oh, and Philip has a good solution that it might be mice. Yeah, I have seen mouse nests clog up the ductwork before. So that is quite the possibility. Although if you're feeling a cold breeze through it, I don't know. I guess mice could have eaten the duct too, and there could be a hole in it. I've seen mice and squirrels do some crazy stuff to vehicle wiring and plumbing. We had one of the people that lives down the street from the shop, they brought their car over because it wouldn't start, and squirrels had eaten the top off the battery. Like, the whole top case of the battery was gone down to the battery acid. And it's like, I don't know how the squirrels ate that far without, burning their faces off. But it is crazy the mess they will make of a vehicle. Hopefully all the messages are actually coming through to my window here. There's a weird thing blinking in the top corner of my screen that keeps saying 7 new chat messages, but there's nothing here when I scroll down. And then question, finally made it to a live episode. I've had hold on, I'm reading the wrong thing. I was just reading one on the other side. Oh, now I'm confused. Okay, this was the one I was trying to answer. Good evening. I've got 99 LX470 with a poor bouncy ride. I seem to have lots of air trapped in the HC system. New globes, fluid, and bleeders. I keep bleeding it to no avail. Any ideas? Whenever I've had them be real bouncy, it's always been bad globes. I guess you could still have air in there, or the struts themselves could be bad. But I don't really know how the struts themselves would fail without leaking, externally where you would know it. So I guess possibly still air. They can be a real pain to bleed. I've gone through 2 or 3 of the metal cans of HC fluid on them before, trying to bleed them out, until I don't get air coming out of the lines. But I really haven't done that many AHC bleeds, because where we are, the lines always rust out and the system is so rotten that it's not worth fixing, and we end up just doing AHC deletes and like switching them over to Old Man Emu. So I haven't done a ton of actual diagnostics on the systems. And then the question I started reading a minute ago, had a 9480 for about 15 years. I love it except for the lack of power. I think yours has a turbo. Compare that versus an LS swap. Having an LS here, I'm inclined. I think a turbo is likely a lot less expensive than having an LS swap done. Now, if you're doing an LS swap and you already have an LS, they're probably on par price-wise. An LS swap probably has more potential for power, because I know like my Turbo 80 feels similar in power to a customer we have with a LS swap truck. But that's an LS truck that's, basically stock motor that you could then turbo, or build up, to get even more power. Up until maybe a month ago, you couldn't turbo a 93, 94, but Cruisers and Company just came out with a kit to do it, which opens that up. But yeah, I like the 1FZ. So I would be inclined to keep the 1FC unless yours already has problems. But we are seeing more and more people doing LS swaps. So, I think it's just whichever you prefer. And then got front axle on 80 series taken off, painted everything, radius arms, steering linkages all off. Only thing that's still installed are my shocks. Any tips on getting it installed? Put the panhard in first, because then you can rock the axle back and forth to get the bolts lined up easy. Then do the front 2 bolts on the radius arms, and then you can just roll the back mounts up in. That's probably your easiest way to get that all lined back up. And yeah, Nochi Sunflower, on the 94s, Cruisers and Company just came out with a standalone, I think it's Cruisers and Company, just came out with a standalone engine computer so you can turbo a 94. Yeah, if you've got a rod knocking and you've already got an LS, I think you've already answered your question, because doing an LS swap would probably be way cheaper than a 1FZ rebuild and adding a turbo kit with a standalone computer on top of it. If you're going to do all the work yourself. If you're paying somebody to do it, it's probably a wash. I know the couple customers we've got local that paid to have LS swaps done. They were $80,000 to $100,000, which is insane. But then Cody, my service advisor, he LS swapped his old Chevy pickup, for dirt cheap. So, it all depends on the level of the swap and the amount of labor you're doing to it. I know the one customer we've got, I think his was around $80,000 for the swap that he had done. And it looks factory. It looks like the LS came in that thing. It's beautiful. Horrible to work on, as crammed as everything is, but beautiful. I used to be super anti-LS, and part of me still is. Part of me is you buy a Toyota for the reliability, of a Toyota. But now that, the 80s are getting up in age, where they're getting to, need, engine rebuilds and that, and the cost of rebuilding the engine, LS is starting to make more sense. I still don't think I would ever do it in my truck, but I've seen some really nicely done LS swaps that drive really nicely. Yeah, I know LSs get to high mileage. It's just, I really hate American vehicles and really hate working on them. We opened the shop up to basically Asian domestic about 2 years ago, to try to get more local customers, to even out the ebb and flow of Land Cruiser work. And man, working on American vehicles, it just baffles me, the engineering choices they make, or rather their bean counters make. So yeah, it just seems like sacrilege to me. And then Guitar said he's getting ready to change the O-ring in his distributor cap. How do you confirm you're at top dead center before removal so you don't mess up the timing? So you've got, when you move the crank pulley around to 0, you're either going to be at top dead center or bottom dead center on number 1 when that pointer is at 0. If you take the distributor cap off and your distributor rotor is pointing at the number 1 spark plug on the cap, then you're at number 1 top dead center. And it's, just ahead of the plug on the top of the distributor. The most foolproof way to do it is to pull the valve cover and look at the timing marks on the back of the cams. But if you just run it around to 0 on the balancer and then check to make sure that you're pointed at number 1, that's a pretty good indicator that you're actually at number 1 top dead center. And then Eric's got a 96 Land Cruiser, dropping below 600 RPM, starting to stall out, then kicks back up to around 800 for a few seconds, and then starts coming back down again, with or without AC turned on. You're gonna need more info to try to figure that out. Does it have any engine codes saved, like mass airflow sensor, misfire, rich or lean? Like, codes could help point you in the right direction. Also, watching short-term and long-term fuel trims can help because you can see if it's running lean or running rich. But yeah, with it surging, unfortunately, that's one of those without actual engine data, trying to sort it out over the internet, I have no idea. You'd need to know, what the fuel trims are doing if you've got codes. And I'd even go as far as to say what the engine coolant temp sensor is doing. I've seen a couple of those go bad lately and do really weird things. Because when that temp sensor goes bad, the computer thinks that the engine's at negative 40 degrees and just starts throwing fuel at it, and choking it out. But it's hard to say without having more info. It could be the throttle position sensor also, being out of spec, and the engine doesn't know that it's supposed to be idling. And I, unfortunately, think I'm going to bounce off of here early this evening. My head is killing me trying to focus and read the screen after getting whacked with the drive shaft earlier. And there's a couple more questions that just came in before I said that, so I'll try to answer them before I jump off of here. Guitar wants to know, what's the longest labor-wise job you've had to complete on a vehicle? Probably engine swaps are the longest, because they're 30-ish hours, to swap a long block or short block. We've had much bigger jobs where we're doing a ton of work, where it'll be like, 80 to 100 hours for a complete job. But that's like, combinations of things. But yeah, and thanks, Nokia Sunflower. I'm going to bounce off of here. I'll be back next week. Hopefully I don't hit myself in the head with the drive shaft next Thursday. But thanks to everybody for tuning in, and I will catch you later. I appreciate it. Thanks.